The word karma or karma is a very common word among the followers of all existing religions which were originated in India. Sanskrit and Pali languages convey the meaning of cause and effect by using this word. Rebirth means becoming again. So, karma and rebirth are interrelated. It is difficult to explain karma without talking about rebirth, and difficult to understand how rebirth takes place not knowing the activities of karma. That is why we have to discuss these two subjects together. There are many things for us to learn to have better understanding regarding these two natural phenomena. Simply by maintaining some sort of belief, we cannot understand how they function. Traditionally, as Buddhists, we maintain these beliefs as very important religious issues. But we cannot understand, as well as we cannot explain to others, the real beauty of karma and how karma is responsible for our rebirth. Now let us discuss the first item, karma. What is the meaning of this word? Usually, for any kind of action, we use the word karma. But from the Buddhist point of view, mere action cannot become the karma explained by the Buddha. First, we must know how the Buddha explained this word karma. He says, Cetanan Bhikkhave Kamma Vada, meaning wholesome or unwholesome volitional activities or moral causality are called karma. Anyway, we create certain karma, either mentally, verbally, or physically. Yet, mind is responsible for everything. Mental activities are such that it is very difficult to avoid this situation. Every living being, not only human beings, even other living beings also commit certain karma, because they too have greed, anger and ignorance in their mind. Then, what is the difference between ordinary karma and the karma explained by the Buddha as moral causes? It is not very difficult to understand. First, I give you a simple example. When you drive your motor car, accidentally you knock down a man, and that man dies because of your driving, and you are responsible for his death. Although you have committed a karma, it is not under moral causation or unwholesome karma, because you have not created any idea in your mind to do that. Unless you create the idea either to harm a person or to support someone, mere action never becomes either good karma or bad karma from the Buddhist point of view. Without thinking or planning earlier, or without implanting idea in our mind, we make a lot of mistakes, as well as we do good deeds, and we also experience the good and bad results or effects immediately or within this lifetime. That is the nature of any kind of action and its reaction. When there is a cause, there must be an effect. Regarding a motor car accident, we have to pay the damages or face the consequences according to our attitude, such as negligence, fast driving, or violating the traffic law. If not, some people may come and beat us or kill us because of that accident. Even then, this action never becomes a karma that will follow us for the next life. The effect of such karma will be extinguished if not affected within this lifetime. Since we have not polluted our mind by creating evil thoughts to harm others, there is nothing to remain as karma to create bad effects in the next life. This is the nature of mere action, that we commit without creating the idea or the intention to do good and bad deeds. Moral causation means violations of existing natural moral law. Moral law does not mean man-made morals from the worldly point of view for his own convenience. There are two kinds of morals, which are man-made morals and natural or universally accepted morals by each and every person without any controversy. So, when we violate some of those universally accepted morals, then we violate moral causation or the karma explained by the Buddha. That is called akusala karma or bad karma. The positive side is kusala karma, wholesome activity, mental, verbal or physical action. We always use these three channels to create good karma or bad karma. Mind itself can create very few good or bad karma, but most of the karmas are performed through verbally or physically, unless we use either our mouth to say something or use our body to do something. It is difficult to commit many karmas. But mind itself can create certain karmas according to gravity or heaviness of the good thoughts or bad thoughts. Action itself never becomes either good karma or bad karma from the Buddhist point of view for us to pay the bad effect or to enjoy our life hereafter. If we have done anything intentionally, either good deeds or bad deeds, then we cannot escape from the effect. That is the nature of cause and effect. There is another important point for us to learn. Other religions teach that there is a powerful supreme being either to punish or to reward us according to our good and bad deeds, if not for violating the law given by the God. But they do not talk about karma. Although some other religions, like Hinduism, also believe in karma, their concept of karma is not like Buddhist concept. According to them, there must be a God, either to punish or to reward. Their belief is that God or God judge what people commit within this life and destiny of our life depends at the mercy of their God or according to the will of that God by judging our karma. This is the Hindu concept of karma. The Buddha did not accommodate even that belief. He says that there is nobody else in this world to manipulate or to handle our karma or our life. Karma is natural or independent law, just like gravity. Therefore, karma or the action itself creates the effect. Buddhists do not depend on another person to handle their karma, to punish or to reward. If there is a powerful person who can do anything according to his wish, all of us are at his mercy. Anyway, it is difficult for Buddhists to accept this belief. It is also difficult to understand how a God can forgive all the effects of bad deeds that people have committed just because they believe and worship Him. That is why Buddhism says it is impossible for people to escape from the effect of bad action simply by praying to anybody. We know that man creates sin or bad karma through his mind. Therefore, he is solely responsible for the reaction of his karma. At the same time, forgiveness of sin by a God is not practical or justifiable from the Buddhist point of view. On the other hand, if there is anybody who can forgive our sins, we must understand that we are the only ones who can do so. But there is a method to do that in a practical and reasonable way. Assume we have done certain bad karma due to our ignorance or misunderstanding. One day, by realizing the danger of such action and effect, we determine not to repeat such bad deeds. From that day onwards, try to do more and more good deeds and accumulate more good karma. When we increase the degrees of our good karma, we will be able to suspend or overcome the bad effects of the karma through our mental training. Because there will be a possibility for us to have a better rebirth, although we have committed certain evil deeds. Again, when we continue our good karma, life after life, until we attain perfection or arahanthood, or the karma that we have committed earlier may follow us just like our shadow, but had no chance to affect or attack us because of heavy good karma. Finally, we reach our final goal, Nibbana. After that, there are no more fresh karma to condition another existence, to face the consequences or to suffer. This is the Buddhist method to overcome or to forgive our own sins. We never get the liberation simply by praying or worshipping and performing any kind of ritual and animal sacrifices, asking for forgiveness. Even the word sin is also not a Buddhistic term. Karma is a very big subject, and we have to talk for a few hours to explain various aspects of karma and how the effects of karma come to us and how to avoid certain reactions. Why certain karma cannot affect at all? Why do we experience only certain karma within this lifetime? Why certain karma affect only immediately after our death within the next life? And why certain karma remain or follow us just like our shadow as long as we exist in this cycle of birth and death or repeated birth and death? We also must understand karma is not the only force which influences our life and to experience pleasant and unpleasant feelings. Besides karma, there are many other factors that influence our life. We can divide karma into three groups according to the period when we experience the effect. At the same time, all the existing karma can be categorized into 8 kinds. One particular karma which can condition or produce pleasant or unpleasant next existence is called generative karma. That particular karma is responsible only for generating of our next life, but not for the rest of our life. Then, another karma, which is called supportive karma, that will assist us to maintain our life. Although many people come into existence as human beings, they become very unfortunate due to lack of such supportive karma. They are not fortunate enough to lead a happy, prosperous, contented life. The nature of another karma is to disturb or to hinder our worldly happiness. That is called obstructive karma. Such disturbances confront our life. That means sicknesses, mental disturbances, or some other interruption created by enemies and some other natural forces. People rob us, swindle, and take away our belongings by force. Such unfortunate events also can be regarded as bad effects of the past karma. The fourth one is called destructive karma. Sometimes, while we are enjoying our life, suddenly some unfortunate incident happens to destroy our happiness. We do not know why. Some accident, fire, and flood destroy our belongings and damage our life. Such disasters also may happen to us due to our past karma. Another way to create the effect of karma is according to the gravity or weight of the karmic action. Therefore, this is called weighty karma. Among all those good and bad karma, certain karma become very effective according to the heaviness of the thought, word, and action. All the forces that contribute heavily to create a particular karma. So, at the dying moment, that weighty or heavy karma gets the chance to come forward and become the important karmic force to pave the way for the next activity. Although there are so many other karmas, at the same time, the forceful one gets the chance to become the productive karma to generate the next life. Next one is called habitual karma. The karma, whether big or small, that performed again and again during our lifetime, naturally become our habit since we have done this repeatedly. Such karmic thoughts always prevail in our mind. Let us take a simple example. Every morning we go to our shrine room or altar and pay homage to the Buddha. If any offerings such as flowers, sticks or candles are available, offer them and recite some verses or sutras and concentrate or meditate for a short while. Although this kind of karma can be regarded as minor karma, this can become an important karma to influence the mind of a dying person. Because every day we have been collecting karmic thoughts to enrich the karmic seed in our mind. We know that when the water accumulates into a pot drop by drop, later a very big quantity of water accumulates in the pot. Therefore, we should never think that such karmic actions are not very important. If not, make it a habit to read few passages from our religious books every day before go to bed. Such good mental habits give a lot of inspiration and guard the mind from mental disturbances or impurities. The karma which appears in the mind of a dying man as his last thought is another kind of karma. That is called death proximate karma. This particular karma becomes the deciding factor for the destiny of our future life. People might have committed numerous good and bad karmic actions during their lifetime, but only one particular karma appears in the mind at that moment as last thought, although there are many other karmic forces are deposited in the subconscious mind and follow us. This particular karmic thought is responsible for our next life, because rebirth takes place according to that last thought. It can be a minor one or a very major one, but no one can choose one particular karmic thought purposely at the last moment. For an example, assume there are big and small sized house in a house shed, and the entrances were closed at night time. Next day morning, when the doors are open, the cow who was nearer to the door gets the chance to go out first. That cow can be a small or big one. Very big one who was behind the small one had no chance to go out first until the nearest one go out. In the same way, we can understand the nature of this karmic force. The lesson that we can learn from this example is to know that the religious duties or services that are performed as last rites when the person is going to die can become the last karmic thought in the dying man's mind. But this must be performed when the person is conscious. Such karmic action at that moment remind him certain other good deeds also that he has done earlier and influence the mind to maintain such good karma to become the last thought. If the person passed away while he was holding one of his good karma in the mind, he gets the chance to have a better rebirth because he departs from this world without having any mental pollution or confusion in the mind. Therefore, our habitual karma, what we perform in our day-to-day life, easily can become the last thought. This last karmic thought, which appears in the mind, acts just like a negative of a film. When the film is printed, we can see the same photo of the negative. So the picture is the rebirth. Last thought is the negative of the film. Sometimes we perform certain good deeds or bad deeds without proper understanding. When we commit such action in that manner, the result of such karmic action cannot be certain because such karmic forces do not penetrate deeply into the mind. This karma is called cumulative karma. The effect of this kind of karma will be affected when there are no more other powerful karma, either good or bad, to influence the mind. For this, I can give a simple example. In the physical body, when the resistance power is very strong, many kinds of germs, virus, and bacteria that enter into the body do not create sickness because of the strong battalion in the body to fight with the enemy bacteria. When the resistance power is weak, we are susceptible to get any kind of sickness. In the same way, these minor karmas also can attack us when other good karmas are not active to support us. When bad karmas are not active, these minor karmas also cannot attack us. There is nobody in this world who is free from good and bad karmic results. A small baby dies immediately after its birth. This baby never had the chance either to create good karma or bad karma. Now, what is the destiny or the fate of this child? Do you think there won't be any more rebirth for this baby? Although this child never had the chance either to commit good deeds or bad deeds. In this lifetime, in the storehouse of consciousness of this baby, there are more than enough good and bad karmic seeds. Since there are no good or bad fresh karma to come forward to affect this person, one of his previous karmas will come forward and rebirth takes place according to that karma, which is deposited in the subconscious mind. So far, I have explained 8 kinds of karma according to their function and responsibilities. However, this is a very big subject. According to the Buddha, this is one of the most difficult subjects for us to understand clearly. Karmas are mental activities. Our polluted or clean mind create karma. I have already mentioned that certain karmas can create the effect only within this lifetime. It could not affect, karmas of this particular group become powerless to affect in the next life. The nature of some other karmas are such that they produce the effect immediately after death in the next life, but not thereafter. At the same time, certain other karmas follow us like our shadow and affect us at any time when the necessary conditions are available. These karmas remain as long as we exist in this world or in any part of the universe, and also influence us to change our way of life through the influence of such karma. Although it is difficult to understand why these different karmas affect at different periods, there are reasons for that. The reason for experiencing the effect of the karma within this life only, in the next life and at any time, is due to our mental being, which is called Javana Chitta. In other words, the mental being or state is responsible for the fruitions of karma. Those students who have studied Abhidhamma can understand the meaning of Javana Chitta. It means mental impulses or mental being. However, I am not going to explain this item today. So our good and bad deeds, the idea we implant in our mind during one of the mental beats, conditions the result of karma according to different stages or mental impulses. Rebirth. There are 3 words that people use to talk about life hereafter. They are rebirth, reincarnation, and transmigration. However, none of these words convey the real meaning of the word used by the Buddha to explain what will happen to the life after death. These words give different meanings according to certain beliefs upheld by others. The Buddha has used one word, that is punabhava, meaning becoming again. After gaining his enlightenment, the Buddha proclaimed that he can recall many of his own previous births and the previous existence of others. Further he said, no more becoming again for me. The Buddha did not try to prove the existence of rebirth by giving more details, since it was a common belief among most of existing religions in India at that time. But he gave enough rational reason as to how rebirth takes place. Because different religions interpreted it in different ways according to their traditional beliefs. When we say rebirth or incarnation, we create an idea in our mind that we will appear again. That means the physical body with the same features and the mental attitude. They maintain such belief by depending on the concept of I. When we analyze this concept, we can understand that this concept is not agreeable with the Buddha's teaching, because in reality there is no such person, I. Although we are two-legged at the moment, becoming again can take place as four-leggedness. That depends on how we use this life. So human can become animals, animals can become human, human can become devas or angels or spirits or ghosts. That is why it is not advisable for us to use the word reincarnation and transmigration. If we use these two words, we have to accept that there is a permanent entity or soul which migrates from life to life. But the Buddhist concept of becoming again differs from the others. Becoming again takes place due to some of those karmas that I explained earlier. So it depends on our good and bad actions or the karma, but not on our belief or concept. In a single life, each thought moment flashes in and out of being, giving rise to its successor with its perishing. Strictly speaking, this momentary rise and fall of thought is birth and death. Thus, even in a single life, we undergo countless birth and death every second. But because the mental process continues with the support of a single physical body, we regard the mind-body continuum as constituting a single life. What we ordinarily mean by death is the cessation of the body's vital function. When the physical body loses its vitality, it can no longer support the current of consciousness, the mental side of this process. But as long as there is a clinging to life, a desire to go on existing, the current of consciousness does not come to a stop with the body's loss of life. Rather, when death takes place, when the body dies away, the mental current driven by the thirst for more existence will spring up again with the support of new physical body, one which has just come into being through the meeting of sperm and egg. Thus, rebirth takes place immediately after death. The stream of memory may be interrupted and the sense of identity transferred to the new situation, but the entire accumulations of experience and disposition has been transmitted to the newborn being, and the cycle of becoming again to revolve for still another turn for Buddhism. Therefore, death does not spell either the entrance to eternal life or complete annihilation. It is rather recombination, mind and matter, to a new birth which will be followed by more growth, decay, and then by still another death. Some people cannot understand how a human being can become an animal in the next life. It is true that a man cannot become an animal after his death, but the man who has created animal thought in his mind, and such animal thought and action produce animal life, but not a human. Man who behaves as an animal goes on molding an animal life according to his inhuman thought. In fact, such people are animals in human form. Those who abuse human dignity are responsible for the creations of animal life. At the same time, some people cannot understand how animals again come back to human life. Unless we study the nature of mind and mental process and how mental process change the life process, no one can understand about these changes. Becoming an animal or human means changing the outward manifestations of elements and energies of the mental process and life current into different shapes according to our karmic energy. So, in the animal's mind, the karmic energy is submerged and cannot absorb as humans do. But after death, if there are some good karmic seeds in the storehouse of consciousness, and if that animal has not done more and more bad karmic action within that lifetime, then again that life can turn into human life. Therefore it is not difficult to understand. Now we must try to understand how rebirth takes place. As Buddhists, we believe that after our death, there will be another life or life process continue again and again until we attain perfection or final goal. That is Nirvana. Whether we believe or not, if rebirth is natural, the belief is not important for that. You can say that you don't believe in rebirth, but you cannot stop rebirth if it is natural, just because you don't believe it. If birth, old age, sicknesses, human problems and death are natural, no one can stop them. In the same way, rebirth also natural phenomena. All these are natural occurrences. Since the Buddha has explained how rebirth takes place and the correct method to get rid of rebirth, we regard this as one aspect of Buddhism. A religion cannot create rebirth, but religion can tell us how to get a better rebirth and how to avoid unfortunate rebirth and avoid rebirth if repeated birth and death create suffering. Religion can guide us to understand that rebirth is true It is not necessary to depend on religion. Today, all over the world, people have discovered more than enough reasons, scientifically and psychologically, for us to accept that it is true, without depending on any belief. Scientists and psychologists do not depend on religion. They have no faith in God. They have no idea about karma. They depend on evidence and reason only. There are hundreds of cases in many parts of the world where some people suddenly remember their previous birth and reveal their name and places and where they were, their activities and many other incidents. Those who investigated many of those incidents found out that they are true. It is difficult to deny such discoveries. Another evidence is hypnotism. There is no religion in hypnotism. When the mind is diverted towards the subconscious mind, the storehouse of consciousness projects the accumulated mental habits or mental tendencies. There we can recall our memories and many things that we have learned and recorded in that subconscious mind. Many people could remember the languages and many other subjects that they have learned during their previous life. At the moment, we cannot use this subconscious mind because the normal mind is influenced by our five senses and some other mental objects. Therefore, subconscious mind is completely eclipsed. But occasionally, we get some information from the subconscious mind in the form of dreams. Because while we are sleeping, five senses are not engaged with the mind. Therefore, subconscious mind gets the chance to project some mental tendencies and appear as visions or dreams. That is how we get some information from the subconscious mind. There are many who can hypnotize others in many countries. Recently, a lady in Australia, a country where people do not believe in rebirth, was hypnotized and she could manage to trace back her memory up to 7 previous births. When others examined according to her information, they found out her information are correct. Again, parapsychologists who studied more on subconscious mind started to deal with the mind and realized that rebirth is true. Recently, BBC News announced that according to their observations today, 20% of the Christian world also accept that rebirth is true. But this is not a new discovery. Christianity accepted this belief from the very beginning for 553 years up to Constantinople Religious Council. It was during this council that they discussed this matter and decided to reject. Now it seems slowly they are coming back to the old belief. We must learn how to face facts without any religious prejudice. This is also one of the advices given by the Buddha. Since we have enough reason to accept rebirth, we don't believe that it is mythological or traditional belief. When a man is about to pass away, at that moment, no renewed physical function occurs in his mind. This is just like a motorist releasing the accelerator before stopping so that no more pulling power is given to the engine. Similarly, no more material qualities or karma arise. Buddhists do not believe that the present life is the only life between two eternities of misery and happiness. Nor do they believe that angels will carry them to heaven and leave them there for all eternity. They believe that this present life is only one of the indefinite number of states of being, and that this earthly life is but one episode among many others. They believe that all beings will be reborn somewhere for a certain period of time, as long as their good and bad karma remains. What is the cause of rebirth? The Buddha taught that ignorance produces desire. Unsatisfied desire is the cause of rebirth. When all unsatisfied desire is extinguished, then rebirth ceases. To stop rebirth is to extinguish all desire. To extinguish desire, it is necessary to destroy ignorance. When ignorance is destroyed, the worthlessness of every such rebirth is considered as an end in itself. Then, craving or paramount need of existence again and again can be abolished. Ignorance also begets the elusive and illogical idea that there is only one existence for man. And the other illusion is that this one life is followed by a state of eternal pleasure or torment. The Buddha taught that the ignorance can be dispelled and sorrow removed by realizing the Four Noble Truths, but not through any other source. One must cultivate all-embracing compassion. One must also destroy all desire for the lower personal pleasure and selfish desire. Rebirth takes place as long as such craving exists. Craving for sensual pleasure or attachment. Those strong mental forces prevail in each and every living being in this universe. Those who simply hope and pray that they be not born again must understand that their wishes would not materialize until they make effort to eradicate their selfish cravings. Having seen and experienced the uncertainty and unsatisfactoriness of life under worldly conditions, wise people try to rid themselves of these repeated birth and death by following the correct path. Those who cannot reduce their selfish craving must be prepared to face unsatisfactory and uncertain situations associated with rebirth and becoming again and again. Another difficult thing to understand about rebirth is whether the rebirth is simultaneous or not. This is a controversial issue, even among the prominent scholars. Some people believe that rebirth or conception takes place immediately after death without any intermediate stage. At the same time, some others believe that the departed person remains in spirit form for a certain number of days before rebirth takes place. Another interpretation regarding the same belief is that it is not the spirit, but the deceased person's consciousness or mental energy remains in the space and his own mental energies of craving and attachment support him to remain there. However, sooner or later, rebirth must take place. The spirit form of life in any planes of existence is unfortunate, and their lives in spirit form are not everlasting. How does rebirth take place? Although physical body is no more capable of functioning, mental energies do not die. With it, continue to take some other shape or form which we call another life. The main force for conditioning another life is craving, desire, volition, thirst to live, and does not end with the non-functioning of the physical body, but continues to manifest itself in another form, producing another life, which is called rebirth. The great rishis in India, Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato in Greece, have all promulgated the doctrine of rebirth. Modern poets, philosophers like Emerson and Whitman in America, Tennyson and Wordsworth in England, and Schopenhauer, the most brilliant German philosopher. All of them have given their full support. From Christian pulpits, there were two great churchmen, Henry Ward Beecher and Phillips Bruce, who told their listeners that rebirth was a Christian doctrine too. Josephus, the famous Jewish historian, in his Antiquity of the Jews, says that belief in rebirth was part of the tradition of the ancient people of Israel. According to Buddhism, apart from mind and matter, which continued this so-called being, there is no immortal soul or an eternal ego which man is either gifted with or has obtained in a mysterious way from a mysterious being or force. In the ultimate sense, a Buddhist cannot think an unchanging soul, any being in the form of a deva or a man or an animal. These forms are merely the temporary manifestation of the karmic force. The Buddhist concept of soul is nothing but human consciousness. The nature and functions of this consciousness is very clearly explained in the Buddha's teaching. Those who could not understand the activities of the human consciousness think that there must be some extraordinary energy beside mind or consciousness. Anyway, whatever word that we use to express this energy, such as soul, or spirit, consciousness, or mind, each and every person believes that there is some sort of unknown, unseen energy which is responsible for the destiny or the existence hereafter. By using one of these words, people maintain a concept according to their respective religious background. However, the mind or the consciousness explained by the Buddha can be understood without depending even on religious belief. That is why modern psychologists appreciate and accept these interpretations of the Buddha without depending on any religious background. Death is not the end of our life. It is a temporary end of a compounded physical body. Physical body is not a life. This body is to accommodate life. Life is the combinations of mind and matter. This integration of this combination is called death. Recombinations of mind and matter is called rebirth. Mental attitudes, anxieties, attachments or cravings for various mental tendencies or mental habits are responsible for conditioning the next existence to be a pleasurable or miserable one. External agency is not responsible for that. What the Buddha says is that you are the result of what you were. You will be the result of what you are. That means you are solely responsible for your existence and your pain and pleasure.